Record. All right, welcome Maria. So Maria owns the Akia Shop on Instagram. She's super cool and famous. You guys have to go follow her. She does amazing um hand painted ornaments as well as stationery, beautiful works of art inspired by Greece and so many amazing things. Maria's going to tell us all about how the Akia Shop was founded and like her stories and memories of growing up in New York as a Greek American immigrant. And we're going to also talk about our Freedom exhibition, which is coming in March. So we can't wait to start this conversation. Thanks for being here, Maria.
Christina, I'm very excited.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so our first question is just tell us about your very first memory or childhood memory, middle school memory, or high school memory of like you creating art in your home and maybe like the people that were with you at a very young age and like what inspired or like your first memory of creativity.
So, this is crazy because my first memory of creating art is also one of my earliest memories of my entire life. And it's almost like, seems like it shouldn't really be a memory because I was so little. My sister's 2.5 years younger than me. And before she was born, my dad was painting the inside of her room to get it all ready for where she was going to be. And while he was painting the room, he gave me a paintbrush and let me paint little drawings on the inside of all of the cabinets. There was like a little built-in cabinet in there. So I remember literally taking this like painter's like a little chip brush with like the white paint, and it had been this like very like 70s 80s, that like green that's almost like coming back in style, now it's like an olive green, but like the vintage version of the olive green. So it had been olive green, and I had this like white paint because my dad was painting everything white. I opened the cabinet and I drew like a little like figure. It was just like a circle, like a little stick figure that like a 2-year-old would draw. So I was young, and I just really have a very vivid memory of that. It's so random.
I have a quick question though. So that little like circle little stick figure that you painted, did it
Yeah.
stay there like throughout your childhood and like you would open the cabinet and like look at it?
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. That's probably why the memory has stayed so vivid, because I would see it every time we would open the cabinet. We moved out of that house when I was around 10. But for the first 10 well, I guess the first, 8 years of my sister's life, it was there. And every time we would open and put our things in there, we would see the little like stick figure circle guy. And it's actually hilarious. I haven't thought about this in a really long time, but when my younger son, who's now 7, when he was first starting to draw, his like first character was
Mhm.
almost the exact same character that I drew inside of the cabinet. It was like literally a circle and then 2 lines and then 2 lines coming down, which I guess is probably like a pretty basic thing, but we, I don't
It,
know,
yeah,
just
it's
it's
like
almost like the
this
same exact thing that I remember from my one of my earliest memories of creating something.
yeah, that is so cool. And it's like this like human. It's just like this human caveman experience, even before like there was math, before there was science, before anything, like the cavemen were drawing like, pictures of like each other on the caves and like showing stories through these like basic shapes. So I just
Yeah.
think it's very like primal and like kind of like this natural instinct to want to draw like the first thing that you see probably when you're born is like this circle of a face. So it's
Yeah.
really beautiful. I don't know.
Yeah.
I love thinking about,
100%. I think it's cute that you connected it to caveman drawings, because recently we were on a car ride and my kids were like, we all had to pick topics of conversation and then give like a 1-minute summary of the topic. I don't know why.
uh-huh.
And they go, Mom, the history of art. And of course, I have a master's in art history. So I was like, oh gosh, here we go. And I started by saying, art is an essential part of the human experience. It's been around even before there was language, before there was the written word. There is evidence of people, just like you said, just going into caves and just making sketches. So, I mean, for me, that's really what art is, I guess. And I
Yeah.
don't know, it's
Well, it's so
beautiful that you
important.
made that connection as well.
Well, yeah, and I think I used to teach art, and it's like as like someone who is educating others on art, it's like people don't really understand like why art matters or why it's important or why they should care about it. And it's like well, you wouldn't be able to communicate without it, because seriously, like all the languages that we know and speak today, it started with like these ancestral languages of like birds and like symbols, and it's like people drawing and using like lines and shapes to like depict the world, not like a language, but like the even the Egyptians, it was like little bird drawings or little
Yeah.
like water drawings, and it was like lines and shapes, and like the artwork is what created reality, and like that documentation. And then Darwin with science, he like drew everything. It's like a science, and it's math, and it's like all the subjects that you learn in school, it started with art. And so you have to know art to understand the world better. So it's really important too that we like share this message and educate others, and people hopefully like listening, like it can inspire them to like, you know, research and study art and like learn more about art and like get interested in art, because art relates to everything.
I mean, art is essentially the window to any culture, in
Yes.
my opinion. And I think, even if you don't speak the language, you can go and you can look at the art around you and understand something. Even
Yes.
if you can't speak to a single person, we
Hmm.
all understand visual language.
Yes.
And even if you don't understand why it makes you feel something, it's beautiful to walk in and see something and feel something. And then, even if your connection is like this deep because you don't know how to ask the follow up questions, you have created a connection. And I mean, that's why art's important. I
Right. And
agree.
art is like telling this story. It's like telling,
Yeah.
it's not using like a novel or like like an actual like book story, but it's like telling you this story about, our experience and our life through these lines and shapes and like the history, like the work behind you too. It's like these columns. It's like you're telling me a story of Greek history just through those, images of the columns behind you. It's like it's ancient history being told through like this visual story. And it's like even my piece too, it's like this experience of like experiencing like the crystal clear ocean in Greece. It's like this spiritual energy that you feel, and it's being depicted through like lines and shapes. So it's like this personal story of history and life experiences, just being told through lines and shapes and not through words. So I really think that's amazing, and I'm glad that we share that. I know we know it, but it's like
Right.
telling other people and
Important to say
sharing
it.
it, right, and saying it out loud. It's like people are like, "Oh," like I would see the light bulb like click in people's heads when I explain it like that. And it's like, yeah, like it's a thing. Like art is really cool when you get to really dive deep into it. So Maria, we have to ask, through your adult journey, like was art always like on your heart to pursue as a career, or were you kind of just like how did your journey take you to opening your Akia shop and your Instagram page and your online store, and taking it to markets, and you do so many cool things. So like, can you tell us a little bit about like the journey to getting there, and like maybe if you like got off the path, like how you got back on the path to art, and just whatever.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that art has been weirdly a part of my soul my entire life. I just didn't really know. I remember we would go on car rides and I would always have a sketchbook with me and I would just like sit there and draw random things that I would see. I had a bulletin board that was constantly rotating and I would draw like different Disney characters or things like that. And I got to college, and of course, as one does when you're 18, you have no idea what you're going to do with your life. So I took a 300 level art history class that was called the Greek City. And my advisor didn't tell me that you're not supposed to take 300 level art history classes when you're a freshman. So it was the first day of school. It was like one of my first classes. It was pouring down rain. I had to like walk all the way to like the graduate level architecture building, and I found the class. I'm like 15 minutes late. I'm soaking wet and the professor's talking and I'm like, I don't really think I'm supposed to be here, but I don't really know. So I stuck it out and it became one of the most influential classes of my college career. That summer, I had the opportunity to go to Sicily on an archaeological excavation with that professor. And it took me 2 years to decide that I was going to major in art history. The other part of me was like, I'm going to major in physics because I want to work for NASA. So I kind of was in these two very convergent fields. And then I finally made the decision that art history was going to be where I was going to focus. And so I did that for my undergraduate degree, and then lived in Greece for about a year, and then did my master's at BU as well in art history and museum studies, because a lot of what we were just talking about, something that really has always spoken to me is the concept of sharing art with other people, and inspiring them, like you were just saying, to connect and to do their own research and to ask the questions, and most importantly, to not be intimidated by going to a museum or going and looking at art, whether it's in a church, whether it's on vacation, like wherever it is, to not be like, I don't know anything about that, I can't walk in. So as much as I chose to educate myself and I wanted to pursue that, I wanted to pursue it always. I didn't really know where or how it was going to work, but I think always in my heart, there was this concept that I wanted to learn as much as I could so that I could share it with as many people as possible. So that is kind of where I was.
Well, that's really,
My
really cool. I didn't
education.
know that you did
Yeah,
the museum studies portion of your master's degree. So that totally makes sense, actually, looking at your work, understanding you as an artist and seeing like the influence of the architecture that's in a
yeah,
lot of pieces. It's just like, it's so beautiful that, you pull from that background of your love for, architecture and art history, and you weave it into your work in this, and your work is very approachable and very light and bright and friendly and kind of almost childlike in a good way, that it's very like approachable even to people who aren't comfortable with art or aren't familiar with art. It's like they see your images and it's like a little chair with like the little cafeteria, like the little blue chair. It's like, it's so like staple Greece. It's very recognizable and like just calming and like comforting in a way. It's very like soothing, and even like the waves that you use in your work, it's like the waves that are found around Greece, that image. So
mhm,
I noticed like how you pull in these references and these imageries from Greece. So can you kind of
yeah.
talk to us about like the influence Greece has had on you, and maybe like share like one of your first memories of Greece, or like how it kind of like over like your art career and your love for Greece started to overlap, and
Sure.
any
Um,
of it
so
to like
I would
form
have,
your
oh,
style.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you
No, it's
were
okay.
kind of broke up for a second. So yes, you're totally right. I do weave a lot of references into my art, on purpose. Some of this piece, for example, behind me, you can see like reference to the column, the waves that are through there. These are not just like designs, they are part of the Greek experience from antiquity. Like these are tropes, they're motifs that you've seen over and over and over again, in vase painting, in Greek architecture, like everywhere. And my kind of inspiration is to take these essential pieces of Greece that may seem almost like boring to some people, but make them new again, give them the opportunity to exist now in the 21st century in a way that feels um, inviting and cool, if you will, to our next generation. I think a big part of my inspiration to your question was my yaya, because I grew up in America. She was in upstate New York. We were in Maryland. We would see her like a few times a year. And she had moved from Athens to the States to marry my papu when she was in her early 20s. And every time we would see her, I feel like she would do in a way what I'm unintentionally now trying to do with every single piece that I create, because everything that I make behind it, there is like not just one story, there's like hundreds of stories. There's my experience with whatever is inspiring me. There's generations of people, there's sometimes centuries of people that have been inspired by this same thing that I am presenting in my own way. And I feel like my yaya, in a way, even though we didn't grow up going to Greece every summer. We would see her, and every time we would see her, she would do everything she could to give us those stories, like to the point that we would wake up in the morning and she would have, tsureki and jam and everything, and then a list. Today, we're going to talk about this recipe. We're going to talk about this famous person from ancient Greece. We're going to talk about this movie. We're going to talk about this song. We're going to play this song on the piano. I mean, it was crazy. And I look back on it, and my sister and I, and eventually my brother, when he came along, would always kind of laugh about it. But I think that it has become a part of my soul, this desire to take these beautiful and layered and multifaceted, really, really deep experiences and explore them beyond just like Greece is blue and white and pretty.
Right.
And I love creating things that are pretty and inviting and playful and accessible. And my hope with that is to not, and this is a lot of my inspiration behind Akia as well. My hope with that is to create images so that people will then ask the questions, and not just ask the questions, but want to include these things in their home so that their kids will then also want to ask the questions. So that one day they will then be yayas that can say, oh, do you see this? This is connected to, the time that we were in Athens, or the time that your great grandmother was in Athens. So that is a lot of my inspiration, is how to bring Greece here to us as Greek Americans into our homes, in exactly as you noticed so kindly about my art, in a way that's playful and inviting and engaging and, accessible.
Yeah, it's simple, it's accessible, and I really love what you said about your yeah, like really like when she had you guys at the house, like you like sat you down and like taught you intentionally like taught you about the culture and our heritage and like the recipes and the food and the music. It's like my grandmas did the same exact thing to me
Right.
growing up. It's like because they immigrated
Yeah.
too, they were married, at a very young age, like in their early 20s. They were like 18 or 19 when they came, and they had these marriages and they were in their home, but they held on so dearly to their culture and their roots, and really like their love for their family and like their love for, just like this exuded out of them, that this deep culture, like we've just talked
I,
about. It's like these grandmothers are the ones that kind of brought it to us, and
yeah.
it's so beautiful that we have like these generations of knowledge and like creative expression. And I'm sure too, like your Yaga was probably like crafty in one way or another. I have to ask, was she?
She actually was. She was a musician, so she studied piano in Athens growing up. She would tell stories that during the war, when she would take her eggs that she would have rationed and give them to her piano teacher because she didn't want to not take her piano lessons. So she would always tell us how she would starve so she could take piano lessons. She embroidered, as lots of yayas do.
I was
And
gonna say
then
embroidery.
later, yeah, embroidery. And then later in life, actually, she started painting as well.
Wow, that is
So,
such a beautiful. I
she-
love that. But
yeah,
it's like this thing. It's such a common thread, and I'm trying to kind of pull it out of all our artists to hear about these grandmothers, because it's so interesting how like they influence us, and their passion and their charisma and like their their just true love for Greece and like our heritage and the culture, and just keeping it alive for them was so important after they immigrated here to
yeah,
America. And even though they were in a foreign land, they didn't know the language, they didn't have any money here. It's like they made it their life's mission to preserve like their our culture from Greece and bring it to us and keep it to us. And like, and now it's like we're the granddaughters of these immigrants. And I think it's really beautiful that like we have this shared experience,
yeah,
that it's like kind of brought down. And now like we're the ones that are the next generation and we're creating. And now it's falling on our shoulders to preserve the language and the songs and the music and the spirituality and like the architecture and just like the love and philotimo, like that passion. Philotimo is like the Greek word for had this feeling of hospitality in your heart, or like philoxenia, like the love of strangers, like welcoming everyone in. And I really do believe like our art is welcoming people in a different way, It's like we have that philoxenia, that we're like trying to show everyone, show the world, even if you're not Greek, that like this is what Greece is, this is what we're all about, this is the energy,
Yeah.
welcoming and inviting. And I think like we're doing it through our art and through sharing it with our children and the world now, which is really cool. So thanks, Maria, for telling us about your story and your background. And, we're having this amazing exhibition March 1st at the galleries at Celestial Art Curation in Hinsdale. And the show's going to be up all of March, and it's all women artists. And we're all coming together to show our work, to show our experiences of what spiritual freedom and creating a life of joy and peace and calmness in our soul and our heart, like what that means to us on a daily basis. And so I want to just kind of hear like your perspective of like how you create joy on a small scale, like just like minuscule little moments throughout your day, like little habits or little routines or little practices that you have that bring your soul joy and make you feel this sense of spiritual freedom within your heart. Maybe it's like obviously painting, but also it could be like spending time with family or whatever that means to you. So go ahead, Maria. I'd love to hear how you're creating joy.
Sure. So this is a complex question,
Okay.
because I'm not sure if you know, but my husband is actually a Greek Orthodox priest.
Oh, cute.
So it is,
Oh,
our life is very much intertwined with the church.
yeah.
That being said, it becomes a struggle sometimes in our own family life to look at, you know, because you said spiritual, right? And spiritual can mean lots of different things. It can mean your faith, it can mean how you feel like you're connecting with the world, how you're connecting with family. So this becomes a very, very complex question for
Yeah.
me personally, because so much of our life does revolve around our church community. We also have two kids as well. There are two boys who are 7 and 10. So for me, I think I have always really believed in this concept of finding joy in your life, but my relationship with this has gotten incredibly layered as life goes on and as you have more and more life experiences, because I think that um you're not supposed to just find joy and ignore the bad. It's the concept of experiencing everything fully can even bring you joy. And I think that that's something that I've learned a lot just as a mom, and even through painting and through conversations and through art, the concept of you can find joy by allowing yourself to feel the deep emotions. And this is something I try to teach my kids, is to not just, you're mad. That's okay. Be mad. It's okay. These are all human things. And this is part of our, I think, our spiritual life, and finding that peace, like you mentioned, is recognizing that part of human experience is deep, and not to look at joy as like this thing that you need to achieve and we have to be happy and smile and put on a happy face. But this joy that you're saying is almost, in a spiritual, like faithful sense, the concept of rejoicing in our humanity and in the ability to experience every single moment, and to allow ourselves to experience every single moment fully. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. And me, I grew up going to church every single Sunday. My family vacations were to the monasteries. So, like, I grew up super immersed as a Greek Orthodox Christian. I love everything about Orthodoxy and what it has to offer us, like, on a spiritual level. I feel like people think of Christianity and they have all these, like, preconceived notions of, like, whatever Christianity has to offer, but Orthodoxy is like another layer of like depth and personal connection to God, and this like deep like friendship relationship that we have with him. And like when you read the stories of the saints and things, it's like they talk about this struggle that you have to struggle in order to, find that connection and that joy and that, sustained pure joy, it comes from that struggle. And so through like that practice of, like being disciplined and doing the things every single day, even if you don't feel like it, but that habitual discipline that you have with yourself to execute and take action in faith, it's like that discipline that might not feel easy all the time is actually what's creating that joy, in your life. And it's like this push and pull of like, it's hard, but it's fulfilling. It's like, it's a struggle, but it's joyful. And it's
I
like
mean,
this dynamic that goes back and forth.
I think for me, something, if you're gonna, to connect it to Greek Orthodoxy, I think that our faith is really beautiful because you mentioned this concept of like a deep connection and personal. Like for me, our faith is beautiful. And this is something I try to teach our kids, that it's not, yes, there are expectations. You should go to church, you should do all of these things, but it becomes really much deeper than that. There is layers connecting back to art in just our physical churches that are there, and through the songs and through all of these things that are deeply connected to our Hellenism as well. And so from a spiritual faithful aspect, from the viewpoint of Greek Orthodoxy, I do find it very inspiring to be a part of something that is connected to thousands of years of history as well,
Right.
and kind of built in this like full body experience. Even when you walk into a church, you look around, you see icons, you see gold, you see blues, you see faces, you see animals, you see wood carvings, you hear, like there's
Oh,
so much,
mhm.
you smell things. Exactly, there's an experience of lighting a candle. And I think that it goes back to kind of what I mentioned, this concept of experiencing everything fully is really, for me, how you find that joy and that peace in life, is
Yeah.
not trying to architecturally construct your life to make it like the perfect life or the joyful day or like, the perfect family meal, but to actually experience everything, whatever it is. You drop an egg on the floor while you're cooking, it's kind of pretty. Look down. It's like cracked and it kind of looks like art. Like almost you kind of want to do it again and see if the same thing happens. So kind of experiencing everything and realizing that that is humanity and that's what we're here for. Um, so
Wait,
that's
I love that. That's like such a good, I feel like artists know this, and that's what makes us artists, is like we really, really feel like the world, like through our body and our senses.
yeah.
Like we really know how to look at things, and look at weird spills or weird like oil spills and like make it into something, or like look at the clouds, or like look at blades of grass, or look at like random, you know, cement on the sidewalk, and like we think it's beautiful because like we're so
Totally.
involved in like the sensation of like the senses, like
Yeah.
seeing, hearing, touching. Like we're very sensitive, in a good way, and I think for me too, it's like that's what my art is about too. It's like the senses are activated. You're smelling the water, you're feeling the ocean, like you're feeling everything with your whole entire body. And
Mhm.
that's what the art is about for all of us as artists. It's like this whole body experience of like
Yeah.
feeling the joy. I love that. And it's like you're feeling the joy. It's not just like, it's not like, oh, like I journaled for 10 minutes this morning and that's what brought me joy. It's like looking around your room and feeling like a deep sense of gratitude for your home and for your family and the life that you created, and like it's more than just like writing it down or like making it a note, but it's like the the feeling and the atmosphere you're creating and like the people you surround yourself with. It's like this daily thing that you're experiencing, and I think that's a really good way to put it, Maria. I love.
Yeah.
I haven't like thought about it that way, so I'm happy that we're like getting
Yeah.
this conversation out. This is
That's
so
what these
cool.
conversations are for,
Yeah. And
to
it's like,
inspire
it's
each
so,
other.
yeah, and it's so refreshing to have these meaningful conversations because it's like, it's like not everyone in your life always wants or knows how to talk about, these deeper, human experiences. It's like
Yeah.
sometimes I was talking to a friend today because this painting is about transparency and it's about like getting deeper into the layers of a person's heart and like really being authentic and open and transparent with someone and being like, this is who I am, like, no hiding anything, like, this is just like what it is. Like, you see what you get, and like, and not trying to like put on a face, like you said, or like fake the happiness. I think that's the reason why I'm so interested in investigating this joy topic, is because we're surrounded in this society where people do fake it, and it feels like a lot of inauthenticity
Yeah.
and like it feels like you can sense other people's energies, that they're not joyful, that they're not happy in their life, that they're, that they're not satisfied or fulfilled. And so I think it's our job as artists to kind of show people like, hey, like, there is a side where you can be transparently, joyful, you know, at all
Yeah.
times, and you can mean it, you know.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my,
And I
I
think
love that.
as artists, we want people to feel their feelings fully, right? Because art can inspire you. You can look at something and feel happy. You can look at something and feel melancholy. You can look at something and feel lust, even. You could look at something and feel um, nostalgic. And I think a lot of your work and my work does have that concept of nostalgia. And those aren't always like feelings you think of as positive, because some of those are difficult feelings to deal with. It's not just like a smile on your face and joyful, but if you, by allowing yourself to feel those feelings, then you have the joy of being a human, which I think is the most important thing.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think it's really awesome. And I think it's really good to have that kind of balance of experiencing all of the emotions of life, and having, and not having this joy, or happy emotion like up on a pedestal, but acknowledging that like there's room for every emotion to exist in harmony, and like, you know, feeling it all together is like what's so beautiful, and it makes us human. So I love it. I feel like we could just keep going on and on. And honestly, too, maybe down the road we'll do a part two and just
Okay.
keep the conversations going. But for now, just for time's sake, I
Mhm.
want me and Maria are going to kind of go through and talk about the work that Maria is planning on putting in the show. So, can you talk to us a little bit about the piece behind you, like the inspiration? You kind of talked about it a little bit already, but like I'm thinking like the middle section, is that inspired by Hios and Bidhi? Or
It's not inspired by Kyo. So everything on this painting, even this bottom part here where you see they look like little hearts,
uh-huh.
love Greek vase painting. So I love going to like the Met and just looking at the details, right? You study Greek vase paintings in your art history courses, and they're like, here's Ajax and Achilles, and this is the most important vase, and you need to memorize all these facts. But then you zoom out from that like main image,
Mhm.
and you see that the artists in antiquity made sure that every single bit of that vase had a meaning, like there was something there. They were decorative artists. They weren't just people that were employed. They were artists in the true sense of being artists. And you really start to feel that when you zoom a little bit out from the figures and you see the way that they filled the space. So
Mhm.
all of these little motifs are kind of lifted, with the exception of the columns, they're lifted from the details that you might find around a Greek vase.
Cool.
So you even the waves, right, that you see
Yes.
here, you think ocean, you think sea, the waves, this kind of concept of it, if you see, it's even connected to the column right there. It's the same kind of swirl.
Yes. Yes.
It's
Oh my gosh. I never like drew that connection literally until just now.
really know that or pick that up until you're actually doing the experience of drawing it, right? You don't like necessarily make that connection, but then you're drawing it and you're like, wow, this is the same. And so you see the waves on tiny little vases, right, going around, and then you see the same kind of idea in the columns. And eventually, this kind of concept of the waves and the water, this eternal connection, became also the Greek key, which we know is a meander that kind of never ends. This idea of always, to your question before about spirituality and finding peace in the world, right? It's this idea of everything is interconnected with each other.
Mhm.
And that's really kind of a lot of the inspiration behind this painting is just like layers of different things. This was my first time really using spray paint in this way, which was really fun. So the background was spray paint. So it was this experience of these are the things that I want on this canvas, but what's the experience and how are they going to come out?
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed giving myself freedom with this to not have a set end and to just let myself add the layers little by little, which I do
Ooh,
feel
so
like kind of connects to the way that the vase painters may have done it. They definitely planned out their drawings, but then you see their creativity in the like empty spaces in between. And I
yeah.
kind of feel like that's what I was channeling when I was creating this piece, this freedom.
Okay, I love it. Wait, my one question though, do you think it's done, or do you think you're gonna maybe add another layer to it before you show it, or what are you? What
I
is?
think it's done, and I think that the hardest part of being an artist, I think, is to know when you're done with a piece.
I
Um,
I feel that.
and I think so much of my work is very intentionally restrained, that
Is.
it makes it even harder for me because I just wanna, like, add something, and then a lot of times when I push myself to add more, I end up not liking it, and I go back to, like, the before photo that I took before I added that next step, and I'm like, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that."
Yeah.
So, for me, this was done. I had actually started it before the summer. I had kind of laid down in white just a few things, and then after the summer in September when I was kind of processing, my summer in Greece, I went and did the next few layers with the spray paint outside and kept going, 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 and then at one point, I said, "I'm done. I'm stopping. I'm
Okay.
gonna step away."
Yeah.
So this is its final form.
I love it. I love it. I love it more now that you like explained like the different elements to it. Like of course at the beginning it is striking. It's like this minimalistic, piece, but it's like there's these layers of, antiquity and Hellenicism and this theme of, that interconnectedness with the water and the key. And I think it's really great. And honestly, too, the reason I asked, I thought I've been to Chios and
Oh,
the
yeah.
middle section, it does look like the buildings there in BDE. There's like a whole city where it's all decorated. Literally, it's very, very similar. So it's interesting to see like how that like really isolated island, like those themes traveled throughout Greece.
Yeah,
And
they're everywhere.
I think that's really cool. Do you want to share with us the other sketch that you're thinking of?
Sure. I have about 2 minutes left, but I would love to share that with you, Christina. Sorry, I have to go get
Oh,
my
it's
children.
okay. Or
But the other thing that I'm working on for the show is this is a sketch and it's going to become larger of the Nike of Samothrace that's in the Louvre. She's always been somebody that really speaks to me. So when Christina presented me with this concept of freedom, I was thinking, and she kind of popped into my head because she is this her entire demeanor is free. She's standing there. She is proud. She is tall. She's just about to take off. You feel her freedom. And Nike in Greek means victory. So you don't necessarily, okay, maybe does that work? Does that not work? But so much of what Nike can mean victory in a lot of things. But I think even for many of our ancestors that grew up, with memories of not having freedom, not having spiritual freedom, not having freedom of education, not having freedom to move around, Nike does feel very connected to this concept of freedom and to the fact that she's a woman as well that is empowered and really just feeling her feelings. And I was very, very inspired. And so she is going to become one of the pieces that I present to the show for that reason.
I feel like Nike definitely is an embodiment of what it means to have this spiritual freedom. And I think it's also kind of ironic that the Just Do It, the Nike that we know, it's like at the end of the day, like that just doing it, just taking the action, just, trying different things, experiencing different things, and just doing the thing is what ultimately creates that sense of joy and fulfillment and flourishing within our own lives. And so I think that's a really nice way to kind of sum up our whole conversation today. So thank you, Maria, so much. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person, and everyone who's watching, you're invited to join us on March 1st at Celestial Art Curation in Hinsdale. And we're going to be doing a live panel discussion from 3 to 5. And so all the artists will be there, and you'll get to meet them in person and ask them more questions about this topic, as well as other things that are, on your mind. We'll have that time to talk and have an open discussion about the artwork and our experiences. So it'll be a really beautiful day. And then immediately following, we're going to have a reception. So everyone is welcome. Bring your family and your friends. Invite, anyone who has a deep appreciation for Hellenic culture, being Greek, anything at all. We're all going to be there together on that day of March 1st, and the show will be up throughout the month. So I'm so excited, and I'm very grateful that you're participating and bringing these beautiful works of art, Maria, and I can't wait for the show. So thank you, and without further ado, we'll talk soon. Bye, everyone. All right.